Welcome to Stuff They Didn't Teach Me in Sunday School. You know, when you're a cheater, sooner or later you're going to meet somebody that's an even better cheater than you are. I don't know if Jacob met somebody who was a better cheater than he was, but he certainly met his match. And he certainly had to live with the consequences of spending some time with another cheater. The man that he met as his match was his mother's brother, his uncle, Laban. When he left Bethel and continued north to the old family grounds, he stayed with his uncle, and there he met his future wife. He fell in love with the beautiful Rachel, not with Leah. We're told Leah had weak eyes. I've always wondered if that meant that they didn't sparkle or that she didn't see well and ran into walls. I'm not sure which, but she had weak eyes. And the bargain was that Jacob would work for a total of 7 years to pay to marry Rachel. In Genesis chapter 29, he does just that. He works 7 years, and when the 7 years are up, there comes the long-awaited wedding. Now, I don't know about you, I was engaged for about 10 months before I got married. 7 years seems like an awful long time. So the wedding came, the wedding night passed, and when Jacob woke up in the morning, he woke up not beside Rachel, but beside Leah. Immediately he went to his father-in-law and said, "You cheated me." Words from the cheat. The father-in-law said, "Yeah, I did, but you're married to her now, so you can keep her." And he got to work another 7 years for Rachel. I think in Sunday school I had the idea that he now worked another 7 years and then married Rachel. In reality, he married Rachel and then worked another 7 years, so he had 2 weddings back to back. The cheating goes on in the story. This time it happens between his 2 wives. Leah, who was not the wife who was loved in the same way that Rachel was loved, actually had the most babies. And if you read chapter 31, or chapter 29, verse 31, through chapter 30, verse 24, you get a story of one wife trying to outdo the other wife in producing children for Jacob. The result, the bottom line result, by the time you get to the end of verse 24 of chapter 30, is that Jacob has 11 sons. One more is born to Rachel later, Benjamin, and that one would kill her. She'd die in childbirth with Benjamin. But he has 11 sons at this point, eventually 12, and only 2 of them actually by Rachel. They even threw their maids into the mix, so that Jacob had sons that were credited to Leah by Leah's maid, and sons that were credited to Rachel by Rachel's maid. The interesting thing is we never hear of Jacob objecting to any of this, and he has a total of 11 sons in this way. And the cheating still doesn't end. Jacob and his father-in-law / uncle, Laban, still don't get along. And Jacob finally makes a deal with him so that when he leaves, he can have some flocks to take along. And he says he'll take all the striped ones and the spotted ones. And so what Jacob does is he peels strips of bark off of poles and set the poles in front of the place where the animals come to water, because when they come to water, they also come to breed. And the idea in the pagan mind was that whatever animals saw as they bred would imprint the young. So if they see striped poles in front of them, as they breed, they would give birth to striped or spotted lambs and kids. Now we know that it doesn't work that way, but in this case God was with Jacob and it did work that way. And the spotted and striped herd grew while the solid color herd did not grow. And Jacob and his father-in-law are trying to outdo each other in the whole area of producing flocks. One of the points of this story is about God's keeping his promises. Sometimes because of what man does, but quite often in spite of what man does. Jacob's primary interest is not what God's up to, not his world around him. Jacob's primary interest is Jacob. He's concerned about himself. And yet in the midst of the cheat's concern about himself, God is working his plan. God is using Jacob to build a great nation. And the 12 sons of Jacob would become the 12 fathers of the tribes of the nation of Israel. And it's in this nation that God would eventually send his son, the Redeemer of the world. It's part of God's plan, but it wasn't part of Jacob's.